Hello everybody, Blue Dooley, and kind of a late start on this video as I waited until after dinner before I even got started. But we're jumping back on the snowplow. We need to finish up mounting everything for the dump bed, and then we're going to cut out and weld up a new snowplow for the truck. And since it has been a while since I've done a video on the whole build, I thought what we'd start off with is just kind of an overview of the truck's running gear and kind of how I built it in case anybody wants to build their own snowplow truck. And this isn't going to be a definitive way to do it. There's lots of ways to do things. This is just the way I did it. Is it right? Maybe. Does it work? Yeah. I have plenty of videos on it plowing snow, so it does work. So let me grab the camera and we'll kind of go over the truck's running gear and what I think about different parts I am using on the truck. And then I'll grab a chunk of exhaust pipe I have and we'll cut out a new plow. Okay, for people that are new to the channel, this started life as a Brooder Toys Mac snowplow. Has a plastic snowplow on the front you could kind of angle and raise and lower manually. Plastic wheels and tires. The dump bed and the cab are pretty much, well, the cab, dump bed, tanks, air tanks, battery box, and the toolbox on the other side. That's pretty much all that's left of the Brooder. I did pop the cab off here. So from the factory, or from Brooder Toys itself, the cab is just this tan color. So I did some detail painting on the floor, and, and painted up the dash a little bit. Tried to give a little more depth to the dash, and I mean, you know, close up like this, it's not perfect, but you know, from a little distance and with it in the cab so you can't actually see it up close, the result is, I'm pretty happy with it. Let's pop, get that out of the way. So underneath the cab, underneath the floor of the cab, is the MyTrick RC light controller. Now this particular light controller is kind of a universal fit. So you plug in your lights and you can change its mode to do cars, aircraft, boats. So the light kit is kind of pieced together on this, and this controller was actually in my Grand Hauler before I stepped it up to a buyer unit. If you just want lights on a vehicle, man, the MyTrick RC stuff is pretty nice. The wire leads are nice and long, the LEDs are bright, and you can plug this in. The way it's intended to be plugged in on like a truck or a car is channel 1's your throttle, which will control your brake lights, and then channel 2 is wired into your steering, and that does your turn signals. I hate having the turn signals come on when the truck actually steers, because that's obnoxious as hell. So I actually wired up mine on this truck, so a separate channel on this actually turns on a set of amber lights on the back of the dump bed and just flashes them like kind of a slow strobe or hazard lights. So the truck's brake lights just come on and they're dim. And then the work lights, the headlights, the turn indicators, which just come on, they just come on, they don't function because the plow's tall enough you don't see these lights anyways. And then the top, the cab, the clearance lights come on, and then this light bar I think has quit working. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to probably put a new light bar on the truck. But the light bar is not from my Trick RC. It's just a standalone unit I got off the web. So I need to go through, because of course in taking it apart and rewiring it, I've changed the mode on this light kit. So I need to put it back to the mode I need it on. And then all of the lights will function like they're supposed to. So get the interior out of the way. And it's a mess because of course I'm redoing the truck with a Fly Sky radio instead of, the Fly Sky Noble instead of the 10i I'm running in the other trucks. So I got the 8-channel receiver to work with the Noble 4. And the truck does actually pretty much need all 8 channels to run the light kit the way I want it to, the light bar, the plow functions, and the dump bed, plus steering, throttle, and lockers. So for running gear, we're running a Hobbywing Fusion, and this is a 1200 kV setup, RC 4-wheel drive scale transmission. And I'm going to have to set you down here for a second. I'll flip the truck on its side. And the heater comes on. So we'll come back when the heater turns off. Now that I got the truck tipped up on its side, we can kind of go over stuff on the bottom here. All of my servos on this particular truck are Hex Fly 25 kilogram metal ball bearing servos. They are standard Red Cat servos. And this truck actually has 4. 2 for the truck and then 2 on the plow. The servos handle all the plow functions, steering, and the differential locks. Now, all 3 axles are Hercules Hobbies 14 scale semi-truck axles, but these all have the ability to lock and unlock the differential. The drive shafts, all 3 drive shafts, are RC 4-wheel drive, just a steel drive shaft. And for the rear suspension, this is basically the stock suspension on all Tamiya semi-trucks, the Globe Liner, the King Hauler, the Grand Hauler. I believe all the European trucks all run the same suspension, which is just links on the bottom and leaf springs on top, which, being a Mac, it's not 100% accurate on suspension scale or drive line, as Mac axles are top load, whereas everyone else, and including these, are what's called a front load, because the ring gear and pinion are all mounted in like a 3rd member, kind of like the Ford 9-inch, and Toyota axles, just much bigger, and they slide into the front of the axle. Well, that whole assembly on the Mac actually comes in from the top, or Rockwell military axles are the same way. I believe this is the RC 4-wheel drive disruptor transfer case. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that is correct. The chassis, cross members, the frame is all made out of pretty much just flat stock, 1/4 inch thick, 3/4 inch tall flat stock. I can probably, since we redid the dump bed, I can cut off this mount for the linear actuator. I can trim that off if I wanted to. Now my plow mount is both angle and flat, mild steel, and it bolts to the chassis behind the bumper here and back here up above the leaf springs. So completely steel chassis, aluminum axles, aluminum transfer cases, steel drive shafts. So I made an L bracket that bolts here to the frame. It just comes up, and then the bottom of the cab bolts to that. I had thought the reason the light bar was acting up is the voltage from all those servos was drawing it down too much, so I put a capacitor in here, a glitch buster capacitor. That didn't actually help, so I'll probably take that off. I do have the fusion set for 7.4 volts output. The only thing 3D printed on this chassis is the battery box, as I never made a lid for it, but I built this to look more to be like a hydraulic tank behind the bed instead of down here on the frame rails. So that's where my battery sticks into. It actually works pretty well. So the dump bed mechanism, well, frame, is angle iron. A regular steel door hinge is the hinge I used for the chassis, and I just trimmed it down, welded everything to it. Like I said, this suspension is kind of accurate to a Mack, or I also drove a similar suspension to this on Freightliners and Internationals, specifically roll-off trucks. The springs actually hold the weight, but because they are designed to pivot, so the axles can actually articulate freely, and they work just as good and in real life as they do in scale. So that's pretty much all the running gear on this truck. Like I said, I'm switching the radio over to a Noble Plus, which is 8-channel. The radio I had in this was 10. Don't really need all of them. And I wanted to make the plow a little easier to drive one-handed, which is easier to do with a traditional radio instead of a twin stick radio. Forgot to mention, leaf springs up front. And the rear wheels are on my 3D print pages, which there are links down below to. I don't think I've updated it to include my Cults 3D page yet, but you can find these rims, rear rims, on my Thingiverse page. They're 2 halves, they just glue together, and then you glue the tire to it. This is a Tamiya wide front rim, and it is hex driven, or has a hex adapter on it, so you can just slap it on an axle with a 12mm hex. While the heater was running, I cut out a new piece of metal for the snowplow, and I actually, to make my snowplow, I've just sliced up this chunk of 5-inch exhaust pipe I have left over from when I built the stacks on the truck, on my full-size truck. So this kind of, like scraps and stuff like this, if you have an idea what you're looking for or what you need, you can probably go to an exhaust shop and see if they have, in this case, I didn't actually measure this, so let's get out the tape measure here. So I eyeballed it to like 10 and 15/16 of an inch. So you could probably go to an exhaust shop and ask if they have a 10 or 12-inch long piece of exhaust pipe you could purchase just from leftover work they've done. I mean, they probably save scraps at least a foot long, so they can, if they need something real easy, they can just cut a little chunk out. So you can ask around. Don't ask for it for free. Say, hey, I just need a short little piece of, in this case, 5-inch exhaust tubing. Can I buy some? And most places will probably be willing to sell it to you, but don't ask to just dig through a scrap bin. I actually had a machinist I've worked with a few times through work and some other little projects tell me to actually don't ask for digging around in the scrap. Kind of have in mind what you want, and they'll be more than happy to help you with that. Case in point, as the video on this thing's been a long time ago, but my engine stand, this piece of 1-inch plate, this chunk of pipe, and then this thick-walled pipe, which is inside it. These 3 pieces I got from the machine shop we use for work. And I went in to just ask about some scrap, and he said, well, we don't let anybody just dig around in the bin, so what do you need it for? I said, I'm building an engine stand. He's like, okay, I can help you with that. So we wandered over to a job they just finished up using a bunch of 1-inch plate on, and found this little guy. And then the 2 pipes, we had to go outside, but we did manage to find this. We didn't cut any of these. These are the way they came from the machine shop. So I bought some steel tubing, and then the channel I had left over, and then I bought the wheels. So yeah, if you need some scrap steel that's a little more heavy duty than what you can get from like a farm and ranch store or anything like that, kind of write down or sketch out even a real rough sketch of what you want. Then go to a machine shop or a welding shop and say, hey, I'm trying to do this. Do you have any small pieces I can purchase? And they will more than likely be more willing to help you that way than if you just went, hey, can I go dig through your scrap bin? So that's my tip for RC cars, full-size rigs, anything you need metal for, and you don't need a ton of it. Again, kind of draw out. It can be a terrible sketch, just something to kind of give a visualization to what you want, and have a list. Hey, I just need X amount of square tubing. Do you have some left over from a job I can purchase? So I'm going to reuse most of what I already built. The biggest difference between this being a little wider than this one and a little taller, I'm not going to put a cutting edge on this one. I'm actually going to just put this piece up here. So I actually am going to stand it up more, so it doesn't have quite as steep of an angle of attack. It has a much shallower angle of attack. So maybe it'll get under the snow a little better, just because it doesn't have the weight, even with these springs pushing it down. Covering the microphone, sorry. I do have more of this square tubing, so like I said, I'm going to roll this back a little bit more and not put a cutting edge on it. I also wanted it a little wider, so when it's angled, it pushes the snow away from the truck a little more. But this A-frame will pretty much remain unchanged. I might tack a little, another little piece of flat on here so the servo is mounted at both sides, so the servo stays mounted a little more securely. But otherwise, I'm not really going to change much on the plow. I just wanted a little bit different angle and a little bit wider. So I cut and drilled my square tubing and then got it hooked back up to the truck except my springs. Kind of hard to see the screen with safety glasses on. So I'm not sure in the in the RC world, if all of these angles actually matter. However, if you are building your own plow, get your hinge point close to the ground. That way, if it's up too much of an angle, if you hit something, it's just going to pick the front end of the truck up. If it's kind of parallel, I think, with the ground, again, air quote, I think, if you hit something, it's going to push everything straight into your mount. So you do need to make a very sturdy mount, which is why mine comes down and then angles up. It's hard to see with the tire on, but it angles back up to the chassis and bolts. So all of that force is actually in two places of the chassis and not just one. Again, probably overkill for a radio-controlled snowplow, but I kind of think it's better to keep the whole plow assembly close to the ground like a full-size rig. Because again, if that angle is too steep, anytime the truck resists any interference, it's going to want to pick up or hinge up at your hinge point instead of just pushing. That's the other reason the truck is made out of flat steel chassis instead of aluminum chassis. I wanted the truck to weigh as much as I could, get it so it'll actually push snow better. That's also why I had to ditch my sprayer, and I just have to put 15 pounds in the dump bed, is just to make sure it has enough weight to get traction so it'll actually push snow. I don't think I actually went into that much detail when I built it the first time. So, like I said, I want this pivot, the pivot point for the angle, to be on the same plane as the actual pivot for the lift mechanism. That way, you know, when it does hit something and brings the truck to a stop, I'm not risking tipping the truck up, or really binding up the driveline by this part of the truck and the front end of the truck coming up when it comes to a stop. It just stops. That might actually be worse for it, but I don't know. That's just what I'm thinking anyway. So you want the plow mounted low and kind of parallel with the ground. That way the plow can actually kind of raise up and follow the terrain a little better, which is actually why I have it on springs. So the springs push it down and keep it from chattering. So now I got a little random spacer holding it up that actually worked out better than I thought. So now what I'll do is I'll connect the ground clamp to this piece of exhaust tubing, and then I can tack weld it at the angle I want. Now again, a real plow has a fairly steep angle of attack. I think 70 degrees is what I've read was optimum. So I'm going to tilt mine out a little more, so the plow will actually kind of go under, kind of curve this way a little more, so it'll go under the snow. Again, the toy truck doesn't have the same physics as a real plow due to weight. I mean, you figure this truck in full size with a sand spreader on it and the plow, you're pushing damn near 60,000 pounds of total mass, and the plow itself weighs as much as a small car. I mean, you got probably 6,000 pounds? 6,000 pounds of plow out here on the big highway trucks. So of course they can run a steeper angle of attack, because the way I'm setting this up, if it were real, that plow would really tear up the pavement. Which the guy I used to work with said, if you're not peeling off 1/8 of an inch of the asphalt and throwing sparks, you're not plowing. So there's that too. So like I said, I kind of want this to be scale, but I also want it to function. So certain things have to not be scale. That's why it shocks instead of just hanging here by a chain. As the shocks press it down into the ground. As much weight as I have forward, that's why the battery's mounted kind of up towards the cab. It's just to keep a lot of weight so the plow doesn't chatter and actually, scoop snow a little better. Plus you figure if you actually had a snow shovel, the snow shovel is much more like that than this. So now that I messed with it, it's not going to sit there. So I got to hook my bottle up to my MIG welder. And like I said, I'm just going to clamp the ground to this piece, tack it in 2 spots so it stays, and then I'll take the whole assembly off the truck, put it in the vise, and finish weld it. Now I should also point out on this plow, again, I'm not mad at this iteration of the plow. It worked, but as you can see, I'm not a great welder by any stretch of the imagination. I didn't weld it fully across. I just tacked it on both sides, and I put the cutting edge on it because I did a worse job cutting it than I thought I did. So again, this plow works, and it works really well. I just want a little better one. And since I have, this stuff's free, I paid for it years and years and years ago. I got the square tubing for another project that kind of got put on the back burner for a little while. So I'm kind of using materials I already have. And again, as you can see from this angle, the plow is plow. Line up that edge. It's, inch, maybe a little over an inch wider. Get the tape out. Be scientific about it. 1/16 over an inch wider. Because again, I just eyeballed the cuts. So that's the other thing is, it helps to be precise because that means parts line up a little better, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Is this going to look super scale? Not really. Do I care? No. Is it going to allow me to play in the snow with my RC truck and clear part of the driveway without using my back? Yes. And that's what's important. Is this is just a fun way to waste time in the snow and make more content. I would have gotten to this sooner, but it's February and I've only had to shovel the driveway once, so it kind of hasn't been a priority. But now that we got some snow, and I'm sure we'll get more snow in March and April and February. I mean, we're only in the middle of February, so I'm going to tack this up, and then we'll come back. We'll come over here and examine my less than stellar welds. I know how to weld. I'm not a welder. I'm not a professional welder. And quite truthfully, if you are a welder, you're probably going to be looking at these and laughing at how terrible they are. Will they work for what I'm using it for? Yes. Are they pretty and am I proud of them? No on the pretty and okay on the proud of them. All I care about is it'll hold, the welds will hold for doing what I'm doing. If this was actually structural or safety dependent on the quality of the welds, well, I would do more welding so I would be a better welder, or I would ask someone I know who is a actual welder, is their job title, they do it full time and are a really, really good welder, I would ask them to do that. However, since this is a toy truck, I'm not going to get too picky about it. I got enough weld on them that'll hold. As you can tell by the discoloration, I did actually get penetration. So again, are they pretty? No. Will they work? Yes. We'll come under the underside here, and you can see the heat got all the way through the exhaust tubing. Oops. So since the furnace is running, I'll pull this out of the vise and we'll mark off. Oops. We'll mark off on here where this other servo tab needs to be. Get that welded on there, and that'll probably do it for this video. So let me get that tacked on and we'll come back. So we got some Rust-Oleum safety yellow paint going on the plow. Well, the blade of the plow. Then over here, it's a little crooked, but it'll be all right. Got the other end of the servo mount welded on, so I'll paint this probably tomorrow after the welds cool, and I'll get servo mounted up. The other thing I need to do is on that new plow blade, just putting some heat shrink tubing on a pin and zip tying that link in place. It kind of worked, but it kind of didn't. So once I get everything mounted up on the plow frame, I'll actually mark that new blade and probably drill a hole all the way through it and just run a long bolt through both the top and the bottom of this out for the rod end to bolt to adjust the plow angle. So this video, I know, is kind of a little all over the place. I even switched hats. I didn't want to get my Hobby Concepts hat grungy with welding, so I switched to a grungy hat. I know this video was a little all over the place, but yeah, I need to get the plow back together. So expect to see the plow in the next video as well. We will finish bolting it together. I probably won't have a new light bar yet, but I can always add that any time of the year. We'll get the dump bed put back together, the plow all working, and then we'll have to set all the endpoints for the plow. Well, the plow angle is the only endpoints left I have to set. So down in the description of the video, you will see an affiliate link to Red Cat. If you want to support the channel and you want some Red Cat products, click that link and that'll support my channel. Otherwise, it costs you nothing. Subscribe, click like, and that's the only support I need, is just like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Do you think RC snowplows are ridiculous? I do. That's why I'm building one. But that's going to do it for this video, so we will catch you in the next one.